The sun was bleeding orange over a dusty gas station in the middle of nowhere, Arizona, when a tiny figure came sprinting across the cracked parking lot like the devil himself was chasing him. Barefoot, tears cutting clean lines through the dirt on his cheeks, a little boy no older than 7 crashed straight into the wall of leather and chrome that was the Iron Saints Motorcycle Club. "They're beating my mama!" he screamed, voice cracking like thin ice. "Please, they're hurting her real bad. She's screaming. I ran as fast as I could." 20 hardened bikers, men with prison tattoos, scarred knuckles and rap sheets longer than Route 66, froze mid-sip of their beers. The only sound was the wind and the boys' desperate gasping. Big Mike, the 6'5" president with a grey beard down to his chest and a patch that read, "Fear no evil," dropped to one knee so fast his chains rattled. He placed one massive hand gently on the kid's shaking shoulder. "Slow down, little man. Breathe. Where's your mama right now?" The boy pointed with a trembling finger toward the rundown Sunset Motel 200 yards down the road. The one with the flickering neon sign and the reputation worse than death row. "In room 12, there's 3 men. They locked the door. I crawled out the bathroom window. Please, mister, they're gonna kill her." You could hear hearts cracking inside leather vests that day. Big Mike looked up. 20 pairs of eyes that had seen war, betrayal, and blood met his. Not one of them blinked. Not one of them hesitated. "Mount up," he growled, voice low and dangerous. "We ride in 30 seconds. The boy's eyes went wide as 20 Harley engines roared to life at the same exact moment, shaking the ground like an earthquake. Little Jake, they'd later learn his name, stood frozen in awe as the Iron Saints, the most feared 1% club in the state, formed a perfect V formation with a 7-year-old stranger standing right in the middle. And right then, in that gas station dust, something sacred was born. Hey, if this story is already gripping your soul, do me a solid, smash that subscribe button on Road Motorcycle Diaries right now, because we only tell the real stories that remind the world bikers have the biggest hearts on the planet. Hit it, rider. I'll wait. The convoy rolled out slow at first, almost respectful, tires crunching over gravel like a funeral march. Then Big Mike raised one fist. The throttles opened. 20 bikes screamed toward the motel like avenging angels dressed in black leather. Little Jake rode on the back of Big Mike's bike, tiny arms wrapped around a waist thicker than a tree trunk, face buried in the Iron Saints president patch, praying harder than he'd ever prayed in his short, broken life. Room 12 was at the far end. The door was closed. But even from the parking lot they could hear it. A woman's muffled screams, the sickening sound of fists on flesh, and a man laughing like a hyena. The bikers killed their engines in perfect silence. What happened in the next 3 minutes would be talked about in clubhouses from Tucson to Toronto for decades. But nobody, not even the Iron Saints themselves, could have predicted how deep this one act of mercy would cut into their souls, or how it would completely rewrite the rest of their lives. The engines died as one, 20 throttles snapping shut like guillotines. The sudden silence was louder than any roar. Even the desert wind seemed to pause, waiting. Big Mike swung his tree trunk leg over the seat and set little Jake gently on the ground. "You stay right behind Mama Bear," he ordered, nodding toward a 5'2" woman with a pink mohawk and a patch that read Sergeant at Arms. Her real name was Carla, but everyone just called her Mama Bear because she'd once knocked out a cop with a pool cue for calling a prospect the N-word. Jake nodded, tears still streaming, and hid behind her legs like a frightened cub. The Iron Saints moved like a SWAT team that had traded body armor for leather cuts. No shouting, no wasted motion. Boots crunched across broken glass and cigarette butts toward room 12. From inside, another sickening thud, then a woman's choked sob. "Please, I have a son. Don't." Big Mike's jaw flexed so hard a scar on his cheek went white. He raised 3 fingers, the universal signal, Prospect Tiny, 6'8", and 320 pounds of pure prison muscle stepped forward with a fire extinguisher he'd yanked off the motel wall. The rest fanned out, blocking every possible exit. Two brothers slipped around back in case anyone tried the bathroom window Jake had escaped through. Big Mike didn't knock. Tiny swung the extinguisher like Thor's hammer. The cheap motel door exploded inward in a cloud of splinters and dust. Three men in wife-beaters and meth scabs froze mid-act. One had Jake's mother by the hair, fist raised for another punch. Her face was already swollen purple, lips split, blood dripping onto a stained carpet that had seen worse nights. The second man's knuckles were raw. A fourth man, no wait, only three, were visible, but the room stank of fear and violence. The woman, Sarah, later we'd learn her name, locked eyes with the wall of leather in the doorway and whispered through broken teeth, "Jake, he's safe, ma'am," Big Mike said, voice calm as a graveyard. "We got him." The biggest of the three abusers, a skinhead covered in prison ink, laughed nervously. "This ain't your business, old man. Walk away." Big Mike stepped inside. The room was so small, his shoulders almost touched both walls. "Son," he said, voice dropping 2 octaves, "you just made it my business the second you put hands on a mother while her baby was watching." Skinhead reached behind his back for what every biker knew was a gun. He never cleared leather. Mama Bear moved like a panther. A chrome chain whip cracked through the air, wrapping around the guy's wrist. Bones snapped like dry firewood. The pistol clattered across the floor. Tiny kicked it under the bed without looking. The second abuser lunged with a knife. Big Mike caught the wrist mid-air, twisted, and the man dropped screaming as his shoulder dislocated with a wet pop. The third tried to bolt past them into the parking lot. He made it 2 steps before 5 Iron Saints tackled him like NFL linebackers, driving him face first into the asphalt outside. The crunch was audible even over Sarah's crying. In less than 8 seconds it was over. The 3 men lay moaning, zip-tied with their own belts, blood pooling under swollen faces. Sarah collapsed to her knees, crawling toward the ruined doorway, calling hoarsely, "Jake! Baby!" Mama Bear brought him running. Mother and son crashed together in the dust, holding each other like the way drowning people clutched driftwood. Big Mike stood over the abusers, chest heaving, fists clenched so tight the knuckles cracked. He looked down at the skinhead, the one who'd been hitting Sarah when they burst in, and said the sentence that would become legend in every clubhouse in America. "You don't get to hurt mothers. Not on my road. Not ever." Then he turned to his brothers and said something no one expected. "Call the cops." 20 jaws dropped. Big Mike raised a hand. "We do this right. We do this clean. These pieces of trash are going to prison for a long, long time. And the world's gonna know exactly who sent them there." But as the sound of distant sirens began to rise over the desert, something happened that none of the Iron Saints, not even Big Mike, could have predicted. Sarah looked up at them through her busted eye, clutching Jake, and whispered words came out that hit harder than any punch any of them had ever taken. "Thank you for giving me my life back." And little Jake, still shaking, walked straight up to Big Mike, reached up with both tiny arms, and hugged the giant biker's leg like it was the safest place on earth. Big Mike, the man who'd once done 15 years for manslaughter and never cried once in his life, felt something wet slide into his beard. He looked down at the boy and made a promise he would keep until the day he died. But right then, as red and blue lights painted the motel walls, a new danger appeared, one none of them saw coming. Red and blue lights strobed across the cracked stucco of the Sunset Motel like a nightmare disco. 4 county sheriff cruisers screeched in hot, doors flying open before the cars even stopped rocking on their suspension. Out stepped Sheriff Roy Delgado, a man whose mustache alone looked like it had its own badge. He took one look at 20 leather-clad bikers standing over 3 zip-tied, bleeding men, and his hand went straight to his holster. "Hands in the air! All of you! Now!" Big Mike didn't flinch. He slowly raised both massive paws, chains clinking. "Evening, Sheriff. We were just performing a citizen's arrest. Delgado spat on the ground. Citizen's arrest, my ass. I've been waiting 10 years to pin something on you animals. Step away from my suspects. Mama Bear stepped forward, phone already recording. Your suspects were caught in the act of felony aggravated assault on a woman and attempted murder of a minor. We have 20 witnesses, video, and the victims right here. You gonna do your job or keep writing fairy tales? Delgado's deputies found out, rifles half raised, twitchy. Everyone knew the history. Delgado's little brother had been killed by an outlaw club in '09. Ever since, he saw every patch as a target. Little Jake, still glued to his mother's side, started crying again, terrified the cops would take his new heroes away. Sarah, face swollen like a pumpkin, found strength she didn't know she had. She stood up, swaying, blood dripping from her chin, and spoke with a voice raw but unbroken. Sheriff, these men saved my life, saved my son's life. Those 3 on the ground are the ones who kidnapped us in Nevada 2 days ago. They've been doing things. Please arrest them, not the bikers, please. One of the deputies, a younger guy with honest eyes, looked at Sarah's bruises, looked at the crying child, looked at the zip-tied abusers already trying to spin lies about consensual rough sex. His rifle lowered an inch. Delgado wasn't having it. Cuff the big one first, he barked, pointing at Big Mike. I want him for destruction of property, assault, kidnapping. That's when Jake did something that changed everything. The 7-year-old broke free from his mom, sprinted straight at Delgado, and kicked the sheriff as hard as his little barefoot leg could manage, right in the shin. You leave him alone, Jake screamed, tears flying. He's my guardian angel. He saved my mommy. The entire parking lot went dead silent. Even Delgado froze, mouth half open, pain flashing across his face, more from shock than the kick. Big Mike knelt again, gently pulling Jake back. Easy, little warrior. We'll be okay. But Delgado's pride was a landmine, and Jake had just jumped on it. Arrest them all, the sheriff roared, face purple. Handcuffs came out, and that's when the miracle happened. Every single Iron Saint, 20 battle-hardened men, and 1 woman who'd fought wars most people only see in movies, dropped to their knees in the gravel, hands behind their heads without a single word of protest. Chains clinked, leather creaked, tattoos and scars caught the cruiser lights like some outlaw stained glass window. Big Mike looked at his club in the eyes and said, calm as Sunday morning, we did the right thing. Let the system sort it out. We ride for the innocent. Always have, always will. Deputies moved in, rougher than necessary, slamming brothers face down, knees in backs. Sarah screamed, trying to stop them off. Jake was hysterical. Mama Bear, last one standing because the deputies were scared of her, live-streamed the whole thing on the club's barely used Facebook page titled Iron Saints MC, Arizona. Within 6 minutes, the video had 40,000 views. Within 12 minutes, news helicopters. Within 20, the county prosecutor was on the phone yelling at Delgado to stand down. But right there in the dust, as cold steel clicked around Big Mike's wrists, he looked at little Jake one last time and mouthed, I got you, kid, forever. The boy believed him. What nobody knew yet was that this arrest video was about to explode across the entire country and completely rewrite the Iron Saints' future in ways none of them could imagine. But before the sun came up, something even darker was waiting inside that police station. The county jail smelled like bleach, vomit, and broken dreams. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry hornets. 21 Iron Saints, 20 brothers plus Mama Bear, were split across 3 holding tanks, orange jumpsuits swallowing their cuts, boots confiscated, chains removed for the first time in decades. Big Mike sat alone in the high-risk cell, back against cold concrete, eyes closed, breathing slow. He'd been in worse cages, Leavenworth, Florence. This was a country club by comparison. Across the hall, in the women's tank, Mama Bear was already organizing. She had the drunk girls singing Sweet Caroline just to keep morale up. Every time a deputy walked past, she smiled sweetly and asked if he'd seen the live stream yet. The kid deputy, the honest-eyed one from the motel, kept blushing and looking away. At 2:17 a.m., the metal door clanged open. Sheriff Delgado strode in with two detectives in cheap suits. "President of the Iron Saints," Delgado sneered. "Real name Michael Aaron Carter. 15 years for manslaughter, 2 aggravated assaults, suspected in 3 murders we could never prove. And tonight you finally handed me your whole club on a silver platter." Big Mike opened one eye. "You forgot saved a woman and child from being beaten to death. Add that to the resume." Delgado slammed a folder on the bars. "Those 3 gentlemen you hospitalized say the woman owed them money for drugs. They say you and your animals kidnapped her and the kid. Felony kidnapping, human trafficking, the works. I've got signed statements." Big Mike actually laughed, deep and rumbling. "Sheriff, those 3 can't even spell their own names without drooling. You believe meth-head wife-beaters over 20 witnesses and a 7-year-old hero?" Delgado leaned in, voice low. "I don't need to believe them. I just need a judge to believe them long enough to bury you for life." He turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Child Protective Services took the kid and the mother to the hospital. They'll be in state custody by morning. You'll never see them again." The words hit Big Mike like a sledgehammer to the sternum. For the first time in 30 years, the man who'd once stared down cartel sicarios felt something close to panic. But Delgado wasn't done. "Enjoy your last night of freedom, preacher. Tomorrow we transfer you to county lockup. Separate facilities. No phone calls, no visitors. And when this story dies, so does your little fairy tale about being heroes." The door slammed. Silence. Then from down the hall, one lone voice started singing, low and gravelly, "Amazing Grace." How sweet the sound. Another joined, then another. By the time they reached "I Once Was Lost," every Iron Saint in every tank was singing, voices echoing off concrete like a cathedral, made of rebellion and hope. Even the drunks in the far cells shut up and listened. Big Mike closed his eyes again, but this time a small smile tugged at his beard. Because what Delgado didn't know, what nobody knew yet, was that Mama Bear's live stream had just hit 1.8 million views. Comments were flooding in faster than YouTube could load them. These are the real heroes. Free the Iron Saints. Bikers save lives trending worldwide. And at 3:04 a.m., a news alert pinged on every phone in America. Outlaw biker gang rescues mother and son from brutal attack, then arrested by controversial sheriff. The tide was turning. But inside those cells, something even deeper was happening. Big Mike heard footsteps, soft ones, a female deputy this time. She stopped at his cell, glanced both ways, then slid a folded piece of paper through the bars. It was a crayon drawing. A stick-figure biker with a giant beard, holding hands with a tiny stick boy and a stick lady with yellow hair. Underneath, in shaky 7-year-old letters, "Thank you for saving my mommy. I love you, Big Mike. Jake." A single tear, the second in one night from a man who'd forgotten how to cry, rolled down into the grey beard. He pressed the drawing to his heart like it was made of gold. And right then he made a second promise, one that would cost him everything and give him everything in return. But before sunrise, a visitor was coming to that jail, one that would flip the entire case upside down and expose secrets nobody saw coming. At 6:03 a.m., the jail's front doors hissed open, and in walked a man who looked like he'd been carved out of money and vengeance. Italian shoes, tailored charcoal suit, hair slicked back like a 1950s movie star, gold Rolex flashing under the fluorescent lights. Every deputy straightened up like cadets. He carried a black leather briefcase and an expression that said he ate sheriffs for breakfast. "Vincent Vinny Russo," he announced to the desk sergeant, voice smooth as aged bourbon. "Attorney at law. Here to see my clients, the entire Iron Saints Motorcycle Club. And if anyone tries to stop me, I'll own this county by lunch." Sheriff Delgado came storming out of his office, coffee spilling on his boots. You've got no jurisdiction here, Russo. These are my prisoners. Vinny smiled like a shark smelling blood. Actually, Sheriff, I was retained at 4:47 a.m. by a donor who prefers to remain anonymous, but who just wired $5 million to the Iron Saints Legal Defense Fund. That makes them my clients, and you, my friend, just became the most watched law enforcement officer on planet Earth. He held up his phone. Live on every major network. Biker heroes still detained. Public demands release. Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, version Free the Iron Saints was the #1 global trend. Truckers were organizing convoys. Veterans were posting videos in dress blues, saluting the bikers. A GoFundMe for Sarah and Jake had already hit $312,000. Delgado's face went the color of old ketchup. Vinny leaned in. Here's how today goes. You either march me to my clients right now, or I hold a press conference on these steps in exactly 9 minutes and explain to the world how you're protecting wife-beaters and trying to railroad American heroes. Your choice. Delgado lasted 4 seconds. The deputies practically ran to open the doors. Vinny walked the hallway like a king, greeting every Iron Saint by their road name, shaking hands through bars, calm and confident. When he reached Big Mike's cell, the two men stared at each other for a long second. You don't remember me, do you? Vinny asked quietly. Big Mike frowned. 22 years ago, Vinny continued, you pulled a 14-year-old kid out of a burning car on I-10 after a drunk driver T-boned his parents, gave him your leather jacket to keep warm till the ambulance came. Told him, you're going to be something big one day, kid. Don't ever forget you're a survivor. Big Mike's eyes widened. That kid, Vinny said, voice cracking for the first time, was me. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out the exact same leather jacket, now perfectly preserved, Iron Saint's prospect patch still sewn on the sleeve from when Big Mike had made the boy an honorary member that night. I went to law school because of you, Vinny said. And today, I'm coming home to pay the debt. He turned to the nearest deputy. Open every cell. My clients are leaving. All charges dropped within the hour, or I start filing federal civil rights lawsuits that will follow you to your grave. Delgado tried one last bluff. You can't just... Vinny cut him off the sheriff with a single raised finger, already on the phone. Governor's office? Yes. Put me through to Governor Hayes. Tell her Vincent Russo is calling about the Iron Saints. Oh, she'll take it. 37 minutes later, the cell doors clanged open. Big Mike stepped out first, orange jumpsuit hanging off him like a bad joke. The brothers formed up behind him in perfect lines. Vinny handed Big Mike his cut. The president slid it on like it weighed 1,000 pounds of pride. Then Vinny said the words that made every biker's chest swell. Sheriff Delgado is suspended pending investigation. The 3 abusers just confessed everything on camera to save their own skins. They're going away forever, and Sarah and Jake are waiting outside. Big Mike's knees almost buckled. The Iron Saints walked out of that jail into the most beautiful sunrise Arizona had ever seen. Hundreds of people were already there. News crews, supporters, fellow riders from 10 different clubs, all cheering like the Saints had just won the Super Bowl. Sarah stood on the courthouse steps, face still bruised but eyes shining, holding Jake's hand. When Jake saw Big Mike, he broke free and sprinted again, this time straight into the giant's arms. Big Mike lifted him high, spinning once, both of them laughing and crying at the same time. Sarah walked up, tears streaming, and whispered, "How do I ever thank you?" Big Mike set Jake down and looked her dead in the eyes. "You already did. You raised a son brave enough to run for help. That's the greatest thank you on earth." The crowd roared, but the story wasn't over. Because right then, Big Mike turned to his club, voice carrying over the cheers, and said something that would change motorcycle culture forever. From this day forward, the Iron Saints are done running guns, done with the life. We ride for one reason now, to protect the innocent. Any child, any woman, any person who can't protect themselves, we are guardians now. Every single brother dropped to one knee in the courthouse parking lot, fists over hearts. And little Jake, standing between his mother and the man who'd become his father in every way that mattered, raised his tiny fist too. The video of that moment got 47 million views in 24 hours. But what nobody saw coming was the phone call Big Mike received that night. A call that would test whether the Iron Saint's new mission was real or just pretty words. Big Mike hadn't slept. He sat on the tailgate of his pickup outside the clubhouse, desert night air cold enough to bite, staring at the crayon drawing Jake had given him. The paper was already creased from being carried against his heart all day. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He almost let it ring out. Then something told him to answer. A woman's voice, small, shaking, Hispanic accent thick with terror. "Mr. Big Mike? My name is Rosa Martinez. I saw you on the news. They said you help mothers and children now. Please, my daughter Isabella, she's 9. Her father sold her tonight. They're keeping her in a trailer outside Flagstaff. I have the address. The police say they need 2 days for a warrant. She doesn't have 2 days. Please." The line filled with muffled sobbing. Big Mike closed his eyes. Every old instinct screamed, this is how clubs die. One favor too many, one line crossed, back to prison forever. Then he looked at the crayon drawing again. Jake's stick figure version of him had a giant red heart on the chest. Big Mike exhaled a cloud into the freezing air. "Text me the address, Rosa. We ride in 20 minutes." He hung up and walked into the clubhouse. Every Iron Saint was still awake, sitting around the long oak table that had once hosted drug deals and war plans. Now it only held coffee cups and the faint smell of hope. Big Mike didn't raise his voice. "We got a little girl, 9 years old, sold by her own father to traffickers. Flagstaff. They're moving her tomorrow night. Cops can't move fast enough. We can." He paused, letting it sink in. "This one's different. If we do this, we do it clean. No bodies, no evidence that comes back on us. But we bring that baby home tonight, or we don't come home at all." Silence. Then Mama Bear stood up. "I'm in." One by one, every patch holder stood. Tiny, the 320-pound prospect, spoke for the first time all night, voice thick. "That could have been my little sister." Big Mike nodded once. "Blackout ride, no colors, plain hoodies, vans, not bikes, too loud for stealth. We go in like ghosts, we come out with an angel." By 3:47 a.m., 4 unmarked black cargo vans rolled north on I-17, no headlights for the last 10 miles, 20 shadows riding for a child, most of them would never meet. They parked a half-mile out, hiked through frozen pine forest, breath fogging in the moonlight. The trailer sat in a clearing, guarded by 4 men with AR-15s and the dead eyes of men who'd done this 100 times. Big Mike watched through night vision binoculars borrowed from a veteran brother. He counted heartbeats. Then he gave the signal. The Iron Saints moved like they'd rehearsed it in a past life. 2 guards dropped silently, chokeholds from the dark. Mama Bear scaled the side of the trailer like Spider-Man in combat boots, slipped through a vent, landed cat-quiet inside. 37 seconds later, the back door opened from the inside. Mama Bear's eyes were wet, but her hands were steady. She carried a tiny girl wrapped in a filthy Disney blanket, dark hair matted, eyes huge and terrified, but alive. Isabella. Big Mike took her from Mama Bear's arms like she was made of glass. The little girl stared up at the giant stranger, then did the last thing anyone expected. She reached up and touched the gray beard, whispering in Spanish, "Eres un ángel con moto?" Big Mike answered in perfect Spanish, voice cracking for the 3rd time in 48 hours. "No, mija, solo un hombre que por fin está haciendo lo correcto." Translation, "No, baby girl, just a man who's finally doing the right thing." They were back in the vans and gone before the traffickers even knew the trailer was empty. At dawn, they met Rosa in a Walmart parking lot 80 miles away. The reunion between mother and daughter was so sacred that every biker turned away to give them privacy, eyes suspiciously wet, clearing throats, pretending to check tire pressure. Rosa tried to kiss Big Mike's boots. He knelt so she wouldn't have to reach. She pressed a small silver crucifix into his hand instead. God sent you, she whispered. Big Mike closed her fingers back around it. No, ma'am, a 7-year-old boy did. But as the sun rose over the red rocks, Big Mike's phone buzzed again. This time it was Vinnie Russo, voice tight. Mike? The 3 abusers from the motel? They just got shanked in county lockup. All 3 dead before breakfast. Someone put a 50K hit on them from inside. Big Mike went very still. Vinnie continued, and there's video of a guard letting the killers in. This wasn't random. Someone very powerful wanted those men silenced, and they're probably coming for you next. The guardian angels had just become targets, and the real war was only beginning. 2 days later, the Iron Saints clubhouse looked like a war room. Maps covered the walls. Burner phones sat in bowls of rice. Every brother carried now, legally or not. Prospects patrolled the perimeter with AR pistols under hoodies. Vinnie Russo stood at the head of the oak table in a $5,000 suit that somehow didn't look out of place next to oil-stained cuts. A federal agent badge hung around his neck on a lanyard. Turns out Vinnie had been undercover DEA for 6 years, feeding intel that took down 2 cartels, all while remaining loyal to the club that saved him as a boy. He dropped a thick file on the table. It landed with a heavy thud. Those 3 dead abusers from the motel? Their real names were Darren Cole, Victor Ruiz and Travis McAllister, low-level traffickers. But the money trail leads to a shell company in the Caymans, owned by Senator Harold Goddamn Whitlock. The room went colder than a grave. Senator Whitlock, Arizona's golden boy, war hero, family values candidate, the man who shook babies and kissed hands on every news channel. Vinnie kept going. Whitlock runs a private adoption agency that places kids with wealthy clients overseas. No questions asked. Sarah and Jake were supposed to disappear into that pipeline. When you stopped it, Whitlock cleaned house by killing the 3 abusers so they couldn't flip on him. And now he's terrified you'll keep digging. Big Mike's knuckles cracked. So the monster we saved them from wears a flag pin and sits in Congress. Vinnie nodded. And he just put a $500,000 open contract on every Iron Saints patch, dead or alive. Cartel shooters are already crossing the border. Mama Bear laughed, cold and sharp. Let them come. But Big Mike raised a hand. No, we don't fight evil by becoming it. We expose it, in daylight, where everyone can see. He turned to Vinnie. How long to build a bulletproof case? 2 weeks, maybe 3. I need Sarah to testify. And Jake. But Whitlock's people are hunting them right now. Big Mike looked around the table at men, and one woman who'd once lived for violence and profit. Now every single one of them had the same fire in their eyes they'd had the night they saved Jake. He spoke quietly. Then we disappear them. Sarah and Jake go off-grid until trial. We become the shield. Tiny raised a massive fist. Where they go, we go. And so began the most sacred ride the Iron Saints ever took. They moved Sarah and Jake that same night. 3 vans, no lights, back roads only. Destination, a safe house deep in the Hualapai Mountains, owned by an old Vietnam vet brother who hadn't spoken to another human in 12 years. They arrived at 4 a.m. The old vet, call sign Ghost, met them with a shotgun and tears when he saw the little boy. For the first time in decades, Ghost smiled. Jake ran straight to him and hugged his leg the same way he'd hugged Big Mike. Ghost looked at Big Mike, voice, gravel and whiskey. You brought me a grandson. Big Mike just nodded, throat too tight for words. They set up 24-hour guard shifts, solar power, well water, satellite internet hidden through 7 proxies. Sarah, bruises fading, started cooking for 30 people like it was Thanksgiving every night. Jake, for the first time in his life, laughed so hard, milk came out his nose when Tiny let him sit on a Harley and rev the engine, with the clutch in, of course. At night, Big Mike sat on the porch with Sarah, stars so bright they hurt. She asked quietly, "Why are you doing this? You don't even know us." Big Mike looked at Jake asleep against Ghost's dog on the couch inside. "Because 7 days ago I was a man who thought he'd lost his soul a long time ago. Then a barefoot little boy ran into my life crying for his mama and handed it back to me. Sarah started crying. Big Mike put one gentle arm around her. Careful, respectful. You and that boy are family now. End of discussion. But 2 nights later, under a full moon, drone lights appeared on the ridge. Then muzzle flashes. The war had found them. And the Iron Saints were about to show the world what real guardians do when someone tries to touch their own. The first bullet took the porch light out in a shower of sparks. The second punched through the kitchen window and buried itself in the coffee pot Sarah had just filled. Big Mike's voice cut through the darkness like a blade. Contact front, protect the package. Every Iron Saint moved like they'd been born for this moment. Tiny scooped Jake up with one arm and Sarah with the other, sprinting for the reinforced safe room in the basement. An old Cold War bunker Ghost had kept ready for exactly this kind of night. Mama Bear was already on the roof, suppressed AR-10 barking controlled pairs, dropping 2 cartel shooters before they cleared the tree line. Ghost, 78 years old and grinning like a demon, flipped the switch on the claymores he'd buried 40 years ago, just in case. The ridge exploded in orange fireballs and screams. Big Mike stood in the doorway, silhouetted by the burning house lights, a 12-gauge pump in his hands that might as well have been Excalibur. "Come on, you cowards!" he roared into the night. "You want this family? You come through me!" 15 cartel sicarios in black tactical gear advanced, thinking numbers and night vision would win every time. They'd never fought Guardians with nothing left to lose. The Iron Saints fought like legends. One brother, call-sign Preacher, took a round in the shoulder but kept firing his 1911 until the slide locked back, then used it as a club. Another, Navajo Joe, used his grandfather's bow, yes, a bow, to silently drop 2 shooters at 60 yards before they even knew he was there. Mama Bear ran out of rifle rounds, pulled dual Glock 19s, and walked straight into the open screaming biblical verses while emptying mag after mag. The cartel broke first. 10 minutes of pure hell, and the survivors were running back into the forest, leaving their dead behind. But the house was on fire, ammo cooking off. The safe room door jammed from debris. Big Mike kicked it in, smoke pouring out, and carried Sarah out over one shoulder. Jake tucked under the other arm like a football. They stumbled into the front yard, coughing, flames licking the sky behind them. Ghost limped out last, shotgun empty, beard singed, laughing like a madman. They lost the house, they lost blood, they didn't lose a single soul. And high on the ridge, one cartel shooter who'd played dead long enough raised a satellite phone with trembling hands and reported, "El gigante y sus demonios no son humanos. Abortamos. Todos muertos menos yo." The giant and his demons, they're not human. We're aborting. Everyone dead except me. Word reached Senator Whitlock in his Phoenix penthouse at 5:14 a.m. He smashed a $20,000 crystal decanter against the wall and screamed at his chief of staff, "I want them erased. I want that club burned off the face of the earth." But at that exact same moment, Mama Bear, covered in soot, blood, and someone else's teeth stuck in her knuckles, hit live on the club's YouTube and Facebook. The entire firefight had been recorded by 4 GoPros and Ghost's old security system. She looked straight into the camera, voice raw but unbroken. "This is what happens when you traffic children in Arizona. This is what happens when you send killers after a 7-year-old boy and his mama. We are the Iron Saints Motorcycle Club. We are done hiding. We are coming for every single one of you monsters in suits and uniforms who hurt the innocent, and we will never, ever stop." The video ended with Big Mike, face streaked black, holding crying but unharmed Jake and Sarah, the burning house behind them like something out of Revelation. Within 1 hour, it had 28 million views. Within 3 hours, the FBI raided Senator Whitlock's office. Within 6 hours, every major news network led with "Outlaw bikers defend mother and son in epic gun battle against cartel hit squad linked to U.S. Senator." And in a quiet hospital room 200 miles away, little Jake woke up, looked at Big Mike sitting beside his bed holding his hand, and whispered, "Are the bad men gone forever?" Big Mike kissed his forehead. "Almost, little warrior, almost." Hey, Ryder, if this story is hitting you straight in the soul like it's hitting me, stop right now and smash that subscribe button on Road Motorcycle Diaries. We're only getting started. Like, comment, turn on the bell, because the next part is where the entire world changes. But the war wasn't over, because at that very moment, Senator Whitlock picked up a red phone and made a call that would bring hell itself down on Arizona. Like, comment, share, subscribe to Road Motorcycle Diaries. Tell me below, would you stand in that doorway for a child you'd never met? We read every single comment. Senator Harold Whitlock stood alone in his panic room beneath the Phoenix mansion, sweat soaking through his $3,000 shirt, the red phone trembling in his manicured hand. The voice on the other end was calm, accented, and colder than liquid nitrogen. "You failed me, Harold. 20 of my best men are fertilizer in the mountains because of your little housekeeping problem." Whitlock whimpered, I can fix it. I'll declare martial law, call in the National Guard." The voice laughed softly. "No, Senator, you are done fixing things. Tonight the Iron Saints die, all of them, and the woman and the boy disappear forever. My people are already airborne." The line went dead. Whitlock slid down the wall, sobbing. He never noticed the tiny FBI microphone taped under the desk that had just recorded every word. Because 6 hours earlier, Vinnie Russo had walked into the Phoenix FBI field office carrying a 400-page dossier, a dozen encrypted hard drives, and the testimony of 3 former Whitlock staffers who'd flipped the moment they saw the mountain firefight video. The special agent in charge, a grizzled woman named Rivera, who rode a panhead on weekends, personally signed the raid orders. At 9:02 p.m., Jazz Cartel Blackhawks loaded with elite sicarios lifted off a private airstrip in Sonora, Mexico. The following happened simultaneously across the United States. Every major news network interrupted programming with the headline, "Breaking: U.S. Senator linked to child trafficking ring, FBI raids in progress." 400 FBI agents and SWAT teams hit 47 locations from D.C. to Tucson. Whitlock's mansion was breached by a dozen flashbangs and a battering ram with 4 Jake spray-painted on the side. Someone in SWAT had a sense of humor. And most importantly, 4 F-22 Raptors out of Luke Air Force Base were scrambled with direct orders. Any unidentified aircraft crossing Arizona airspace tonight is to be treated as hostile. The cartel pilots never stood a chance. At 11:47 p.m., the Arizona night sky lit up like the 4th of July as 2 Blackhawks were turned into flaming confetti over the desert. The third tried to turn back and was forced down in a dry lake bed by Apache gunships. Survivors were zip-tied and gift-wrapped for the DEA before their parachutes even settled. Back at the hospital, Big Mike was asleep in a plastic chair, Jake curled on his lap, Sarah holding his hand when the door opened. Agent Rivera walked in, wearing full raid gear, helmet under one arm. Big Mike stood slowly, ready for anything. Rivera pulled off her glove, reached out and shook his massive hand. "Mr. Carter, on behalf of the United States government, the state of Arizona, and every parent who sleeps better tonight, thank you." Then she did something no federal agent had ever done to an Iron Saints president. She saluted. Behind her, an entire hallway of nurses, doctors, and patients burst into applause. Big Mike looked down at Jake, who was now wide awake and grinning ear to ear. "Told you the good guys win, didn't I?" But the biggest shock was still coming, because at 2:14 a.m., the President of the United States, yes, the actual president, called the hospital room on a secure line. Big Mike answered with one eyebrow raised. "Mr. Carter," the president said, voice warm, I've just signed a full federal pardon for every member of the Iron Saints Motorcycle Club for any past offenses. Clean slate. And tomorrow morning I'm inviting you, your club, Sarah, and young Jake to the White House. America wants to shake the hands of its newest heroes. Big Mike was speechless for the first time in his life. Jake grabbed the phone. Mr. President, sir, can Big Mike ride his friends get their motorcycles on the White House lawn? The president laughed so hard, the Secret Service outside the Oval Office thought he was choking. Son, they can park wherever the hell they want. The call ended. Big Mike looked at Sarah. She looked at him. Then they both looked at Jake, who was bouncing on the bed with pure joy. And for the first time in decades, Big Mike cried openly. No shame, no hiding, tears falling into his beard like rain on sacred ground. But even as the world celebrated, Big Mike knew one truth colder than steel. Evil doesn't die easy. And somewhere out there, monsters were already planning their comeback. The morning was perfect, crisp, cloudless. Washington, D.C. sky so blue it looked photoshopped. At exactly 10 a.m., the roar started far down Pennsylvania Avenue. 20 thunderous Harley-Davidsons, polished to mirrors, American flags snapping from sissy bars, riding in perfect staggered formation. No police escort needed. Traffic simply stopped. People got out of their cars to cheer, phones up everywhere. Leading the pack, Big Mike on his matte black Road King, grey beard flying, little Jake perched in front of him on the tank wearing a tiny custom Iron Saints cut that read, Lil Warrior. Sarah rode behind Big Mike, arms tight around his waist, sunglasses hiding happy tears. Behind them, Mama Bear on her pink-flamed Sportster, Tiny on a trike because no normal bike could carry him, ghost-riding Bitch on the back of Preacher's bike still grinning like a lunatic, and every other saint looking like they'd just stepped out of a movie, only this was real. Secret Service had tried to insist on vans. Big Mike had politely declined. They can take my guns, but nobody takes my Harley to meet the president. The gates swung open. Marines in dress blues saluted as 20 bikes rolled straight onto the south lawn, tires crunching on the most famous grass in the world. The president waited on the steps with the First Lady, Vice President, and half of Congress. A military band struck up Born in the USA, the second the engines cut. Silence fell as Big Mike swung off, lifted Jake down, then helped Sarah. Jake, suddenly shy in front of 10,000 cameras, grabbed Big Mike's hand. The president walked down the steps alone, no handlers, and dropped to one knee in front of the 7-year-old. Hey, hero, he said softly. Heard you kicked a sheriff in the shin. Jake nodded solemnly. He was being mean to my Big Mike. The president laughed, then looked up at the giant biker. Mr. Carter, America owes you a debt we can never repay. He stood, pulled a velvet box from his pocket and opened it. Inside, 21 congressional gold medals, the highest civilian honor in the nation. One for every Iron Saint, including Mama Bear. Gasps rippled through the crowd. It was the first time in history an entire motorcycle club had received the award. The president pinned Jake's medal himself on the tiny leather cut. Then he turned to the cameras and spoke to 340 million people. Today, we honor men and women the world once called outlaws. But the only law they ever broke was the law of silence when a child needed help. Let this be a lesson. Courage doesn't wear a uniform, it wears heart. And today, America says, thank you. The applause was deafening. But the moment that broke the internet happened next. Big Mike stepped forward, voice steady but thick. Mr. President, with respect, we don't want medals. We want a promise that no child in this country ever again has to run barefoot to strangers for help. That no mother ever fears the dark because the system failed her. He reached into his cut and pulled out Jake's crayon drawing, the one from the jail cell, now laminated. This is why we ride. If you'll have us, the Iron Saints will work with law enforcement, with churches, with anyone, to create a national rapid response network for at-risk kids. Call it Jake's Law. We'll fund it ourselves. We just want every kid to have guardians when they need them." The president stared at the drawing for a long second. Then he turned to the chief of staff. "Make it happen. Today." The crowd lost their minds. Later, on the South Lawn, while Marines took selfies with the bikers and Jake rode Tiny's trike in circles screaming with joy, Sarah pulled Big Mike aside under the magnolia trees. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Mike, when this is all over, when the cameras leave, will you still be here? For us?" Big Mike looked at her, then at Jake laughing in the grass, then back at her. He took her hand, gentle despite its size. "Sarah, I already talked to Vinny. Adoption papers are drawn up. If you'll let me, I'd like to make this family thing official. You, me, and the little warrior. Forever." Sarah's knees buckled. She buried her face in his chest and sobbed the happiest tears of her life. Big Mike held her like she was the most precious thing on earth, because she was. And somewhere, high above them, news choppers caught the moment on live TV, the most feared biker in Arizona holding a broken woman and promising her tomorrow. The clip got 120 million views in 6 hours, but even on the happiest day of their lives, Big Mike felt a shadow, because Vinny pulled him aside right before they mounted up to leave. "We got Whitlock dead to rights. He's singing like a bird. But there are bigger fish, Mike. Senators, CEOs, even foreign governments. This network goes global, and some of them are already planning retaliation." Big Mike looked at his old friend in the eye. "Then we ride bigger, we ride louder, and we never stop." He swung a leg over his Harley, pulled Sarah up behind him, set Jake on the tank again. 20 engines fired as one. The president waved from the steps, and the Iron Saints rolled out of Washington, D.C., knowing one truth: the war for the innocent had only just begun. 6 months later, the desert outside Tucson looked like Sturgis had exploded. Over 100,000 motorcycles from every club, every state, every country that could get a bike on a boat rolled into a dry lake bed now called Guardian Field. No colors war, no egos, just one massive sea of chrome and leather under a banner that stretched 200 feet wide. Jake's Law, no child left behind. Big Mike stood on a flatbed stage that used to haul hay, now painted matte black. Jake sat on his shoulders, wearing the same tiny cut, now with the Congressional Medal pinned proudly. Sarah beside them, no longer bruised, glowing like the sun. The president was there again, this time in jeans and a Harley shirt someone had gifted him. Congress had passed Jake's Law in record time, a federally funded rapid response network linking every motorcycle club, veterans group, and church that wanted in. A single 1-800 number, one text alert, thousands of guardians ready to ride within minutes. Big Mike's voice boomed over the massive PA, no notes, just heart. "Today, we bury the word outlaw. Today, we prove that a 7-year-old barefoot boy running for help is stronger than every monster in a suit. Today, we tell every trafficker, every abuser, every coward who hurts the weak, you will never sleep safe again, because we ride at night. We ride in storms. We ride when the cops can't, when the courts are slow, when hope seems dead. We ride for the children who have no one else." He lifted Jake high. "This is your army, little warrior." 100,000 engines fired at the exact same second. The sound was so loud, seismographs in Phoenix registered it as a 3.2 earthquake. The footage went around the world in minutes. In Italy, the Pope blessed the screen when it played on Vatican News. In Brazil, favelas painted murals of Big Mike holding Jake. In Australia, 40,000 bikers duplicated the ride the very next weekend. Back home, the Iron Saints opened chapters in all 50 states, not clubs, guardians, no dues, no drugs, no crime. Only one rule: when the alert comes, you ride. No questions. Sarah finished nursing school on the government scholarship created in her name. Ghost finally left his mountain, moved into a trailer onto the new Guardian Field compound, and became the official grandfather to every rescued kid who needed one. Mama Bear started a women's chapter called Valkyries MC, pink patches, zero tolerance for bullshit, and the highest rescue success rate in the country. And little Jake? He turned 8. At his birthday party, surrounded by 300 leather-clad uncles and aunts, he blew out the candles and made only one wish. But that night, when Big Mike tucked him in, Jake whispered, "Big Mike, I'm scared the bad men will come back when everyone stops looking." Big Mike sat on the edge of the bed, the same way he had every night for 6 months. "They won't come back the same way, buddy. Monsters learn. They hide better now. They wear better masks." Jake's lip trembled. Big Mike took the boy's tiny hand. "But here's the secret they don't know yet understand. We got better too, and we'll never stop looking, not while I breathe." He kissed Jake's forehead. "Sleep, little warrior. The whole world is watching the door tonight." Jake finally closed his eyes. But 400 miles away, in a maximum security prison visitor room, a man in an orange jumpsuit with a new face, courtesy of cartel plastic surgeons, met with a lawyer who wasn't a lawyer. The man was the only surviving sicario from the mountain firefight. The lawyer slid him a photograph, Jake and Sarah laughing at the birthday party, taken from a telephoto lens. The sicario smiled with teeth too perfect. "Tell your boss," he whispered in Spanish, "the boy dies on his 9th birthday. Make it hurt. Make the giant watch." The lawyer nodded and left. Phase 2 of the war had already begun, silent, surgical, and ice-cold. And the Iron Saints were about to face their darkest hour. For 3 months, everything was too perfect. Rescues every week. Kids brought home safe. Thank you videos from mothers that made even the hardest saints cry in the dark. Donations pouring in. The Guardian Field compound grew into a small town, dorms for rescued families, a school, a clinic, even a playground built by Tiny's own hands. Big Mike and Sarah got married on the stage where Jake's Law was born, under the same 200-foot banner. Jake walked his mom down the aisle wearing a tiny tuxedo cut with Iron Saints patches on the sleeves. When the preacher asked, "Who gives this woman?" Jake shouted, "Me and Big Mike." And 50,000 bikers roared approval. The world called it the wedding of the decade. But Big Mike never slept more than 3 hours. He felt it in his bones. The quiet was wrong. Then, on the morning of Jake's 9th birthday, exactly 1 year to the day after the motel rescue, the silence broke. 05:14 a.m. The alert system screamed red. Not a child abduction, a direct threat. A single encrypted photo sent to every Guardian phone in the country. Jake asleep in his bed, taken from inside the compound. Crosshairs digitally painted on his forehead. Text underneath in perfect English. Today he turns 9. Tonight he turns cold. Come alone, Big Mike. Old Sunset Motel. Room 12. Midnight. Or the boy dies screaming on live stream for the world to see. Big Mike stared at the photo until the screen cracked in his grip. Sarah walked in, saw his face, and knew. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply walked to the gun safe, pulled out her own Glock 19, the one Mama Bear had taught her to shoot, and racked the slide. "I'm coming with you!" Big Mike started to argue. She cut him off with a look that could melt steel. "That is my son. Try and stop me." Within 30 minutes, the war room was packed. Vinny Russo burst in with FBI vests already waiting. "This is a trap. They want you emotional. They want you alone. Satellite shows 30 heat signatures around that motel. Military-grade weapons, drones, the works." Big Mike's voice was calm ice. "Then we give them what they want, and something they don't expect." He turned to the room. "No colors tonight. Black hoodies, suppressed weapons. We go in like we did for Isabella. Ghosts." Mama Bear grinned like a wolf. "Except this time we don't leave anyone breathing who aimed a scope at our boy." They rolled out at dusk. 4 unmarked vans, no bikes, no noise. The plan was simple on paper. Big Mike walks in alone at midnight. The bait. Snipers on the rooftops. Mama Bear, Navajo Joe, and 3 Marine veterans now wearing Guardian patches. Breach teams in the storm drains, Vinny coordinating FBI hostage rescue on standby 2 miles out. ready to clean up whatever was left. At 11:57 p.m., Big Mike stepped out of the van a block from the Sunset Motel, same cracked parking lot where it all began. Same flickering neon sign, same desert wind. But this time, he carried no shotgun. Only Jake's original crayon drawing folded in his chest pocket like body armor for the soul. He walked straight to room 12. The door was already open. Inside, one single chair. On it sat a life-sized cardboard cutout of Jake, throat painted red, eyes X'd out. And on the TV screen, a live feed. Jake and Sarah, bound and gagged in a concrete room somewhere, tears streaming, a digital clock counting down from 0:02:47. A distorted voice came over hidden speakers. "Welcome home, preacher. You saved one child. Tonight you watch two die, and then we burn your little fairy tale empire to the ground." Big Mike's fists clenched so hard blood dripped from his palms where fingernails dug in. The voice laughed. "Any second now, your teams will be hit with EMP drones. Your FBI friends will find nothing but ashes. You walked into the end, old man." Big Mike looked straight into the hidden camera and smiled. "You forgot one thing," he said quietly. Outside, the night exploded, not with gunfire, with 100,000 motorcycles. Every Guardian chapter in America had been riding silent and dark for 6 hours, headlights off, engines muffled, converging on the coordinates Vinny secretly broadcast 4 hours earlier. They didn't come for war. They came for judgment. The cartel mercenaries never had a chance. The desert did not shake. It surrendered. 100,000 motorcycles rolled in from every compass point. Headlights off, engines throttled down to a predator's growl, forming a perfect circle 5 miles wide around the Sunset Motel. No horns, no shouting, just the low, endless thunder of justice. Inside room 12, the distorted voice on the speakers faltered. What is that sound?" Big Mike stood calm in the doorway, arms loose at his sides, blood dripping from his clenched fists onto the carpet where Sarah's blood had once fallen exactly 1 year ago. "That," he said, "is every promise I ever made coming true at once." At 0:06, the circle tightened. 10,000 bikes became 5,000, became 1,000, became 500 yards out, engines idling in perfect synchronization, like the heartbeat of something ancient and furious. Then the lights came on. 100,000 headlights snapped on at the exact same instant, turning night into blinding noon. The cartel mercenaries on the rooftops, in the drainage ditches, inside the fake construction vans, froze like deer. Their night vision goggles turned into blinding white suns, their comms filled with panicked Spanish. Mama Bear's voice came over every Guardian frequency, sweet as honey and sharp as razors. "Guardians!" These men pointed rifles at a 9-year-old boy on his birthday. "You know the rules. No prisoners." The thunder cut. Silence. Then Big Mike spoke one single word into the radio pinned inside his cut. "Execute." The desert erupted, not with chaos, with surgical beauty. Valkyries on dirt bikes came over the dunes like Apache helicopters cutting off retreat. Veteran snipers who'd served in Fallujah and Kandahar took knees on tailgates and ended threats with one suppressed round each. Tiny led a human freight train of 400-pounders straight through the motel office wall on foot, literally ripping the reinforced command trailer apart with their hands. Ghost, 79 years young, rode an old knucklehead straight into the cartel's drone control van, jumped off at the last second, and watched it explode in a satisfying orange blossom. In 97 seconds, it was over. 30 mercenaries zip-tied or silent forever. Not one Guardian scratched. The live feed inside room 12 now showed a different scene. The concrete room where Jake and Sarah had been held was suddenly full of very terrified traffickers, staring down the barrels of Mama Bear and 10 Valkyries who'd come up through the sewer access no one knew existed. Mama Bear ripped the duct tape off Sarah's mouth, cut Jake's zip ties with a pink-handled knife. Jake looked up at her, eyes huge. "Auntie Mama Bear, did Daddy win?" She grinned, tears falling ash from the explosions outside, lighting up her mohawk like a halo. "Baby, your daddy didn't just win. He rewrote the definition." Big Mike kicked the motel room door off its hinges and walked through the smoke like a biblical giant. He found them 3 minutes later. Sarah ran into his arms so hard she knocked the wind out of him. Jake climbed him like a tree, arms around his neck, sobbing and laughing at the same time. Big Mike held them both so tight his arms shook. Over their shoulders he saw the cartel commander, the man with the new face, on his knees in the dirt, surrounded by 100,000 silent bikes. The man looked up at Big Mike, defiance gone, only terror left. Big Mike knelt, so they were eye level. "You were hired to make a little boy scared on his birthday," he said quietly. "How'd that work out for you?" The man whimpered. Big Mike stood, turned to the circle of guardians and raised one fist. The roar that answered rattled stars loose from the sky. FBI helicopters finally arrived 10 minutes later, rotors chopping, spotlights sweeping. To find the scene already cleaned, perps gift-wrapped, weapons stacked neatly, and 100,000 citizens on motorcycles standing in perfect, disciplined rows. Agent Rivera stepped out, looked at the army, looked at Big Mike holding his family, and simply said, "I'll wait for your statement whenever you're ready, Mr. Carter." Big Mike nodded once. Then he carried Jake and Sarah to his Harley, the same matte black Road King that had carried them to the White House. He set Jake on the tank, Sarah behind him, and fired it up. The circle of 100,000 bikes parted like the Red Sea, and the Carter family rode home through a tunnel of headlights and cheering that stretched all the way to the horizon. But the war wasn't over, because in a dark server farm in Eastern Europe, the real architects, the men who funded Whitlock, the ones who never got their hands dirty, watched the live drone feed of their army destroyed by civilians on motorcycles. One of them closed the laptop and spoke in perfect English. "Very well. If the bikers want war, give them war. Activate Protocol Lazarus, flood the country with product, frame the Guardians, turn the public against them, make the world beg us to destroy them." The final battle for the soul of the Iron Saints was about to begin. It started with a week after Jake's 9th birthday. Monday morning, every major news outlet led with the same headline: "Iron Saints linked to massive meth pipeline, 400 kilos seized in Arizona." Grainy surveillance photos showed men in Iron Saints cuts unloading bricks from a Guardian field hangar. The same hangar where they stored Christmas toys for rescued kids. By noon, the president was forced to hold an emergency press conference. By evening, Grashka's Guardians are traffickers was trending worldwide. Tuesday, a kindergarten in Ohio was sent a bomb threat signed Iron Saints MC. Wednesday, a church that partnered with Jake's Law burned to the ground, spray painted on the ruins, courtesy of Big Mike. Thursday, Sarah's nursing school received an anonymous video of her confessing, deepfake, perfect to helping traffic children. Stocks in companies that donated to Jake's Law crashed. Sponsors pulled out. Politicians who once posed with the Saints now called them domestic terrorists. FBI raids hit Guardian chapters in 12 states. Doors kicked in at 4 a.m. Kids rescued months ago were seized again by CPS for their safety. Big Mike watched it all from the war room, face carved from stone. Vinny Russo slammed a tablet on the table. It's Protocol Lazarus, Eastern European money, Russian AI deepfakes, cartel product. They're flooding the streets with fentanyl labeled Iron Saints Pure. Overdoses are spiking. They want the public begging for our heads. Mama Bear's knuckles were white around a coffee mug. They're trying to make the world forget what we did for Jake. Big Mike stood slowly. Then we remind them. That night, he did the one thing no one expected. He walked into the Tucson FBI office alone, unarmed, hands raised, and surrendered. Cameras caught every second. He looked straight into the lens and spoke to America. "My name is Michael Carter. 1 year ago, a barefoot little boy ran to me crying that someone was beating his mama. I promised him that day I would protect the innocent until my last breath. If me in a cage makes you feel safer, lock me up. But know this, every guardian out there will keep riding for the children even if I'm gone. Because this isn't about me. It's about every kid who still has to run barefoot looking for help. You want my patch? Take it. You want my freedom? Take it. But you will never take our promise. He dropped to his knees in the lobby and put his hands behind his head. The video hit 300 million views in 24 hours. And something shifted. Mothers who'd lost children to overdoses started posting, "The saints brought my daughter home. I don't believe the news." Truckers parked across highways refusing to move until the raids stopped. Veterans formed human chains around Guardian clubhouses. By Saturday, 2.7 million people marched on Washington carrying candles and photos of rescued kids. Sunday morning, the deepfake lab in Bucharest was raided by Interpol after an anonymous tip. Ghost and 3 hacker prospects drinking vodka with some old Cold War buddies. Sunday night, the real evidence dropped. 14 terabytes of chat logs, bank transfers, and videos of the actual traffickers laughing about framing the saints. Monday morning, the president went live again. My fellow Americans, we were deceived. The Iron Saints and every Guardian chapter are hereby fully exonerated. Every raid is reversed. Every seized bike returned with apology letters, signed by me personally. And to the men trying to destroy these heroes from the shadows, you poked the wrong bear. At 2:14 p.m., the same hour Jake had once been saved, every Guardian phone in America received one text, "Come home." Guardian Field filled again. This time 500,000 bikes. Big Mike was released in handcuffs that were removed the second he stepped outside. Jake and Sarah were waiting on the Road King. The second the cuffs clicked off, Jake sprinted and jumped into his dad's arms. Sarah kissed him like the world was ending and beginning at once. 500,000 engines fired in salute. The sound was so loud, the news choppers couldn't stay airborne. And in that moment, under a desert sun that felt like forgiveness, Big Mike finally understood. They had not just won a battle, they had changed the soul of a nation. But one last truth still waited to be spoken, the one that would close the circle forever. 1 year to the day after the night of 100,000 headlights, Big Mike rode alone. No escort, no cameras, just one matte black Road King rolling slow down that same cracked Arizona highway. The Sunset Motel had been bulldozed months ago. In its place stood a simple memorial, a life-sized bronze statue of a giant bearded biker on one knee, arms open, while a barefoot little boy runs into them. At the base, engraved in steel, he ran to strangers crying, "They're beating my mama." Strangers became guardians. Guardians became family. Family became hope. Never forget, one child's cry can change the world. Big Mike killed the engine. Jake, now 10, hopped off the tank first. Sarah slid off behind, belly gently rounded. She was 5 months pregnant with their daughter, already named Grace. They walked hand in hand to the statue. Jake placed a fresh crayon drawing at the bronze boots, same as he did every month. A new stick figure family, now with a tiny stick baby in Sarah's arms and 100,000 tiny motorcycles in the sky like guardian angels. Big Mike knelt, exactly the way the statue showed, exactly the way he had that first day. He pulled the original drawing from his cut, the one from the jail cell, now faded and soft from being carried over his heart for 730 days straight, and laid it beside the new one. Then he spoke, voice low, just for his family and the desert wind. "Little warrior, 1 year ago today, you ran across this parking lot with tears on your face and terror in your heart. You didn't know it then, but you saved us. You reminded a bunch of broken old bikers what we were put on this earth for. You turned outlaws into protectors. You turned fear into fire. You turned me into a father." He looked at Sarah, eyes shining. "And you gave me the greatest gift any man can ever receive, a family to ride for, a reason to come home." Sarah knelt too, tears falling freely. Jake wrapped his arms around both their necks. Big Mike kept going. "Every kid we bring home now, Every mother we carry off a nightmare highway, every monster we put in the ground. All of it started right here, with one barefoot sprint and one impossible choice to care. He stood, lifted Jake onto his shoulders, took Sarah's hand, and looked out over the empty desert that somehow felt full. Today, there are Guardian chapters in 47 countries. Over 2 million patches ride under Jake's law. And every single one of them knows your name, son. They know a 10-year-old boy with a lion's heart taught the world how to be brave. Jake leaned down and whispered in his dad's ear, loud enough for Sarah to hear, "I'm not scared anymore, Daddy." Big Mike's voice cracked just once. "Good, because you never have to be again." They stood there until the sun painted the sky the same bleeding orange it had worn the day a little boy changed everything. Then Big Mike fired up the Harley one last time, Jake on the tank. Sarah pressed tight against his back, hand over the tiny heartbeat inside her. They rolled away slow, no hurry, no destination except tomorrow. Behind them, the bronze giant kept his arms open forever, waiting for the next barefoot child who needs to believe strangers can still be heroes. And in front of them, the highway stretched golden and endless, because some stories don't end. They just become legends that ride forever. Big Mike twisted the throttle. The Road King roared once, deep, proud and free, and carried its family toward whatever came next. Because the Iron Saints learned the greatest truth of all. When a child runs to you crying, you don't just save one life, you save the world. And the world, brothers and sisters, is still riding. If this story restored even a tiny piece of your faith in humanity, do what Jake did that day. Run toward the good. Hit that subscribe button on Road Motorcycle Diaries. Turn on the bell. Drop a "I believe in Guardians" in the comments. And share this series with every rider, every parent, every human who still has a heart. Because as long as one kid somewhere is barefoot and afraid, we ride. Thank you for riding this road with us. See you on the next one, family.